Through the My Toyota store, you can enjoy hassle-free online buying for your Toyota genuine parts and all make parts. With an electronic parts catalog containing over 400,000 Toyota genuine parts, all accessible through a model serial search so you can take the guesswork out of identifying the correct part for your equipment. Get started today at shop.toyotaforklift.com. That's shop.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Christian Ragnas, and he is the CPO at Element Logic. And Element Logic, one of the largest and also the first auto store partner in the world. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and ASRS systems in general, kind of the evolution of these systems and where they are in the market today. And Christian's going to give us kind of the deep dive into that and give us some baseline understanding of how to look at ASRS systems and where Element Logic comes into play as well as an implementation partner. So Christian, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Kevin, and thanks for having me. It's great to be back on the show. We did this short stream in Atlanta a couple of months back, but very excited to be here for a complete episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We talked back at Modex during the live stream, and definitely interested to dive a little further into this, especially in, hearing more about kind of the auto store ASRS journey. As you guys are with the first partner that they ever had, which I think is a big deal. And there's certainly been a ton of auto store implementation. So I'm interested to hear about that. But for people that maybe missed the live stream or not familiar with Element Logic, why don't you give us kind of a brief overview of what you all do?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. So I'm the Chief Product Officer in Element Logic. And I think that's important also to mention because that's actually a new position that we set up 1 year ago. And I think we'll come a bit back to why products are increasingly important for us in Element Logic and how we define that going forward. But as you say, Element Logic, it was born in Norway, same place as AutoStore was born. And I think that's probably also explains a bit of the connection we've had and how we kind of like innovated and opened and penetrated that ASRS market together, starting in this geo. And I think we've been good at exactly that. And both AutoStore and us, we've been building our brand, our reputation, and our success on this, joint go-to-market where, AutoStore makes some great technology and we are able to integrate that and connect that into the actual warehouse processes as a system integrator. So if you look at Element Logic historically, that's really our success. We've been the first AutoStore distributor, and today we're the biggest. I don't want to say any numbers, but I'll do it anyway, where I think we have approximately like 30 to 40% of the installed base worldwide. But also mentioning in that the real, the majority of that installed base is in Europe. So it's really in Europe that this has been like a front runner market where we've been able to really implement at fast speed, very mature, fairly standardized. People are, and also where the e-commerce wave has been very important. And ASRS is very much a good to consumer unit picking type of a system. While in the US, the install base is lower in general for these type of technologies, but we definitely see that as like the big, huge growth potential going forward to succeed in that part of the world. And as I told you, I think before we did a fairly significant acquisition in the US a couple of years back where we acquired SDI. And with that, also a very strong customer base. So for us, it's really about understanding the drivers and the needs of that market and being able to be equally successful there as we have been in Europe.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting, and I mean, 30 to 40% of the installs. I mean, that's a pretty big number when you look at how many auto store systems are out there in the world. And I'm curious. I mean, I guess prior to becoming the first partner distributor for AutoStore, I mean, what was the focus of Element Logic, or was Element Logic created just to distribute AutoStore, or what was happening before?
Oh, that's a super good question, actually. And I asked that. I've been with the company under a year, coming from the software industry, so not really understanding this market that well. So I had the same question to the founder and the CEO, that's still the CEO. And they've done almost everything from selling, shelves, racks, archives. I think the company was called Archive and Storage back in the day.
Oh, really? Okay.
So, yeah. And it's been up and downs, and it's been, recalibrations of the business model throughout the last, I think almost closing in on 40 years. So you can imagine during that time span, it's been a couple of different business models that has been in center of how we work with storage and automation. But I think it was first when AutoStore came into the picture and, looking at that technology, really making a bet on it. And I was also told in the beginning, it wasn't clear cut that this was going to succeed or be successful, or that people even wanted this. So I think there was years where this was really hard, I think, for both companies, but at some point it really took off. So I guess that's a bit innovation for you, like making bets, going in with high risks. But then in this case, we were lucky to choose the right one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting because I mean, I think, I think about the AutoStore solution. I could see like how that would lend itself to archives in a sense, and like why, the founder would think that like, oh, this could be a potentially good solution for us and our customers. So very interesting there. And I mean, since, you're the first AutoStore distributor partner that's been out there. I mean, I'm curious, as we look at the idea of an ASRS system, which AutoStore is, an automated storage retrieval system, how have we seen, and how has Element Logic kind of seen the ASRS evolve over time to where we are now?
Yeah, I think that the first battle that we had to fight was between manual and automation. I think that was like the first actual, thing we had to sell in, like why go from manual processes to automatic processes. And from there, I think, the ASRS is still a very, very young space. It hasn't existed for that long, and it's really in the ramp up of the market with enormous high growth rate, to be honest. So if you compare to any other industry or any other technology. So in that sense, I think it's a bit early to say like, how has it evolved and how will it evolve? But what we see, of course, is that, the technology is being challenged by competing technology, alternatives, other patents. So in that sense, it's becoming a more crowded place, which is normal. Again, when you are first into a market, you are usually there first for some time, and then if the market is attractive enough, then other players will come into it. And I think that's probably where we are now. I think it's like 23, 24 distributors of AutoStore, just to put it in context.
Yeah.
And for us, the differentiation in that market is, it's hard if you only compete on delivering AutoStore, right? So it's really about finding what's unique with Element Logic in this case, and how can we kind of like play on those competitive assets going forward. When it comes to the ASRS market in general, I think it also makes sense to look at the e-commerce space, like the development of goods to consumer. Because in the beginning, you had, I like to do my online shopping and all of that was good. But then Corona came and COVID came, and then suddenly that's basically how you had to do your shopping.
Yeah. So
that really spiked that type of transaction between company and consumers. And then now going out of COVID and looking at, for example, wholesale or large distribution centers, you also see the situation where you're using these goods to consumer type of concepts. Also, when you think about like shipping, like back in the days, maybe you wanted to ship 100 jeans to a Macy's. still you do that. But many companies are now, basically Macy's are saying in the evening that they want 3 of this, 2 of this, 1 of this, 7 of this.
Yeah.
And the morning after, it's in place, it's in the store. So also thinking a bit like immediate, no waste, very speedy type of wholesale processes is also a big development we see within this space, particularly in Europe.
Yeah.
We actually have a customer now that where you can basically order something in the evening, and then you can go to a store location, and then you can pick it up from your own AutoStore ports. Like
really?
It doesn't even get shipped, right? So you have basically 10 robots going there or something like that. Then you have a couple of ports for the store and for the employees of the store. And then you have one which is external for the consumer to go and pick up.
Interesting. Yeah. I remember seeing, I think it was at ProMat last year in the AutoStore booth, like the pickup port, I guess, that they had come out with, and
exactly.
and that concept. Yeah. I mean, I think that's very interesting. And I think, it's, I mean, it's funny too. I think the AutoStore, I want to say that the store in AutoStore was more around like storage, right? But now it's it's becoming like, is this like what the store of the future kind of looks like in a sense, right? And it sounds like, you have an example there where, customers can go and I guess they essentially do the pick themselves, right? So you're kind of eliminating a lot of retail workers there, I'm sure, right?
We'll be back after a quick break.
When it comes to systems, you want something that will start showing results fast. You're looking for a tool that can enable your 3PL or warehouse to get to the next level. So why wait? That's why Carton Cloud provides supported, fast onboarding that can have your WMS up and running in hours, not months. Jump into Carton Cloud's easy-to-use workflows for all of your services, including cross-docking, serialized inventory tracking, e-commerce order fulfillment, and more. This software is built by logistics people for logistics people, and those logistics people are standing by to help train you and support you so that you can be successful with your customer. With 24/7 real-time reporting and free online training, you need to check out Carton Cloud for your operation. Take the next step in your operation by heading to cartoncloud.com/free-demo or click the link in the show notes.
Exactly. And I think, the technology is one thing, and that this is actually launched as a technology. That's great, but it's going to be super interesting to see how the market adapts to this. Like if this actually works with the business models, with the processes that the stores and the organizations want to run. Because I think that was the case back in the days as well. Like you can launch any great technology, but the customers really have to understand how to utilize it. So with regards to this pickup port in particular, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the market adapts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting. And I think too, like we see in a sense, in some aspect, I mean, like you're seeing the fulfillment, like warehouse center, kind of the lines between that and a retail store are overlapping in a sense, right? I mean, you see like, I think like Target is a big example where, they do a lot of fulfillment from the store itself. Like they're using the store as a fulfillment center. I think it's only a matter of time before we see more technology come into play, like putting AutoStore in a store to be able to leverage that.
Maybe I can just do a quick digression since I'm from the software industry.
Sure, yeah.
I worked towards oil and gas, banking, financial sector, public sector, you name it. And it's interesting there as well. Always, business to business software, but the demand of what that software does is highly influenced by the business to consumer software. Mm. So once people got Facebook, once people got LinkedIn, once people got this and that for their private use, then suddenly they didn't accept anymore that the ERP system was really bad, right? And really tedious. And it didn't accept anymore that you were supposed to use 7 months to implement that software.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all of this type of thinking and like the consumer-based thinking connected to warehousing is really also, I think, affecting where the market will move going forward.
Yeah. I think that's such a great point too, because it's, so much of it too is like on that B2B side, or you look at our consumer experience, right? I mean, we all, for the most part, there's still some holdouts out there, but we pretty much all have a smartphone, right? And the usability of that, it needs to be easy. Like, I always use the example, like if you download an app from the App Store and it's hard to figure out and use, like you're probably uninstalling that like right away, right? And I think that expectation, especially like with the newer generations coming in too, that have been, grown up digitally, the expectation in the business world is going to be the same, right? Like they're going to come in and see some old outdated system and they're just going to be like, what is this? Like, I'm not dealing with this, right?
Yeah, exactly. And to do a segue, I don't know if you say segue anymore in the US, but you used to do that a couple of years back.
We do.
But we do the segue to another topic. But I just wanted to, I think this is a nice transition into why we decided to establish products in Element Logic as an organization.
Yeah.
Because it really talks to that point, right? That it's really not about selling a hardware component and then making sure that that works. Like the way we innovate, the way we create products, it can't really be based on that we have some kind of hardware thing that we're set to work and it's set to speak to all of the other hardware components or machines or robots. We really have to flip this around and talk to the users, talk to the consumers of the warehouse. That be it, warehouse management, administration, or even the users at the port, even the customers that receive the goods. Like for us as Element Logic, we have to spend much more time talking to the users of our solutions and understand what's really their pains and what are the value they expect or would like us to create for them, rather than looking at the technology that we have and then trying to think about how it can work smoothly. And I think if we just apply that approach into how we create products and how we prioritize, I think all of a sudden we will see a lot of new products coming up, a lot of new ideas, and a lot of new problems, which we didn't see before. So just building this design-centric, user-centric type of a products organization that can see both the hardware with the software and the IP that Element Logic has, together with services. Okay, so we have an auto store. What type of software do we need to have to make it work well and have a high performance? What does the user actually need? What services can we deliver? What demand is it for training, data analysis? Can we create data-driven applications to make more automated decisions? I mean, all of these type of things, we have to look at this as one user experience, basically, and not stack it up on or not focus it around these single components as if they were, separated islands on the middle of the sea. I think that's, for us, will be a major transition in the way we think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a good point too, because, there's so much, we mentioned Modex here. I mean, you go to Modex, for example, and you look around and there's just, tons of things happening from like a hardware, physical perspective, right? But in a lot of cases, I mean, some of that physical of what we see, like the robots and the automation, even the handheld devices and computers, like, for example, are not necessarily much to talk about or without the software behind them, right? Then what's doing that? So I'm curious in that regard. I mean, one of the questions we had from LinkedIn, actually, we sourced some questions from the community, was, kind of what are the differentiators there? And I think part of it is probably the software that you guys and products that you guys are developing, as you're mentioning in there. But I mean, with multiple different, I guess, partners for AutoStore doing implementations and things of that nature. Obviously, you guys are the largest, but when somebody looks at that, I mean, what are they looking for? What should they look for as a differentiator? And like, what's the difference between one and the other? Since, the AutoStore itself is pretty much the AutoStore, right, from a hardware perspective. So where's the differentiator there?
Yeah. Again, a very good question. I think, again, just reminding us, I think it's 24 companies delivering basically the same technology, of course. And then it's like, okay, well, how come I should choose this from that? I think it's a very a very good question. We can talk about today and then we can talk about tomorrow.
Okay.
I think today we have been chosen and we will continue to be chosen based on the competency and experience in the market and the way we ensure a great output and a great performance of the AutoStore system. That's a decade of experience with only doing this. Like, we don't do a bunch of other type of ASRS or whatever. We only do AutoStore. And that has been a way for us to specialize, of course, in competency and in experience, but also in how our software works, for example. Like, we have optimized our software to ensure that AutoStore becomes as good as it can possibly get. So it's as easy as that. But then, of course, that's not everything we do. And we are considered a system integrator. So we do also connect this to conveyors, to robotic piece picking, to other type of processes and technology in the warehouse. And I think maybe that's a bit what I consider important going forward. I think if you just deliver an AutoStore to customer, it's fine. Like, we're very competitive. You should choose us because we're the best. Or you should choose somebody because they're the best or because they're the cheapest. I guess like that's the two alternatives. But going forward, and especially if I look at the US, that has very high complexity in their distribution centers. They have usually a lot of technology. The labor cost is much lower than many parts of Europe. So they can do things also in a very different way. They have other processes. I think in those cases, and these cases are a large part of the warehouse automation market, so we have to deal with them in some way. I think what they really want, the customers I've been talking to, it's about this holistic view on the operations in the warehouse. To them, ASRS is one component, is one out of 20 components. What they really want to know is like, how is this whole setup looking? Is everything integrated? Is everything smooth? Where's my one login to look at everything I need at once? Where do I go to configure that I don't want to send packages this way after 3:00? I want to stop that. So again, back to this user centricity and really applying that across these various warehouse components that up until now are very siloed in how they work and how they're optimized. So at least for us, I mean, we want to continue to do that and be the best we can be within those areas that we've defined important to us. But in addition to that, I really think it will be essential to deliver software, like user-centric, value-added software that helps the people that work in the DC and with automation, like that it makes their day easier.
Yeah.
Like, bottom line. And to be honest, it sounds super simple, but I don't think it's very easy to do. But I think that company that will manage to do that will probably have a very solid competitive advantage going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think being a previous warehouse manager, I mean, it's certainly, I mean, it sounds easy. Like, how do we, make these workers' lives, easier? And, on the surface level, they're just picking items right off a shelf or something. Like, what's so difficult about that, right? But it is like, very repetitive. It's challenging. There's reaching, bending. Over time, it wears on you and certainly develops fatigue and, potential strains as well from a safety perspective. And I think, that's such a great thing to point out. And I think it's making sense to me why, they've created this CPO position, why they've brought you on from the software side of business as well, because developing that good user experience, I think, is such a key to really driving not only the ability to, I guess, attract additional talent, offset talent that maybe is lacking or is hard to get in certain areas, but also then retain that talent that you still need, I think, is super important too. So being able to create that great experience, I think, is certainly a great factor there. And certainly, like you said, a competitive advantage for sure for not only the solution provider, but then the end user to also have a competitive advantage on hiring and recruiting and, just having overall great worker experience, I think, is super important.
Yeah, I think this is actually a very important point, which we don't speak that much about. And I have to say, like, switching industries, my first visits to DCs and warehouses was a very strong experience because, you have some of these which are very smooth, very silent, good air, whatnot. But then you also have these warehouses, which is like really hot, not ventilated, noise levels going through the roof. And, I can't really help thinking like, I want to do something with this. Our contribution back to the industry that has done so much for us, like, how do we actually improve worker conditions? How do we make sure that, like, the sick leaves goes down in this industry because it's skyrocketing, right? How do we make sure that we have retention? How do we make sure we can, like, switch from repetitive tasks to more insightful, purposeful tasks for the employees? So I think really, and I think if we will grapple with these problems, again, we will arrive at problems, which again will generate solutions that I'm sure our customers would be happy to look into.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a great thing, and definitely I'll say like a noble thing too as well, to take on as a mission to be able to do that, because I think at the end of the day, like, you want those workers, whether you're the one providing the solution that they're using or you're the one that's managing them, hiring them, you want those workers to be comfortable, and you want them to go home the same as they came in, and hopefully at some point to go home better, even too, maybe in some cases. And I think that's a great thing to aspire to, and something that you guys are working on. So I think that really is a great thing to point out there. So I'm curious, as we look at kind of Element Logic into the future, how do you continue to grow, and maybe what are some things on the horizon within the market for you guys?
Yeah, I think if we break this down in regions, I have to say, like, in Europe, we have high market penetration. Things are going well for us. We have very high maturity, both not just with us, but also with our customers. They're like high customers that really understand, like, what best-in-class warehousing looks like. So here it's really about, keeping momentum, keeping market share, and evolving with these very demanding, innovative customers, managing to innovate with them. Then I think for the US, for example, it's a bit different, because there I think there's an untapped market, which we haven't really, where, like, from product's point of view, we have to get people over there. We have to, have our people working side to side with the customer, following them, looking into the processes, really understanding how they work there, and not assume that what works in Europe will work in Texas or in Kentucky, but really, not assume. So there again, it will be like a major undertaking to really understand what will be our offering in that market and how to really scale that in a good way. And we've also established an office in Singapore. So we also want to, we're doing some work in Asia Pacific. And there, I think there are completely other challenges, a very different characteristic again. So I would say, like, the strategy in the future looks a bit different based on what type of region you're looking into. And we want to treat each region with enough care and enough attention to get it right. And I think the solutions might differ a bit.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. And I think it is interesting to see those, like, differentiations within the regions and markets. Even though, we're talking about warehouses and, it seems like, it'd be 4 walls with a bunch of boxes inside all across the world, but there certainly are, like, intricacies and differentiations on how things are put together and how things operate in different regions. So I think it's great that you guys are recognizing that and looking to see how do you thoughtfully go about this, and at the end of the day make that operation better, not just for the business sake, but also for the user sake too. And I think that's a great thing that you're doing, Christian.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it also goes to you just look into the risks of building something. It varies to such a great extent depending on which geo you are operating in. Just take, like, laws and regulations, or let's say you go into a place in the US where you have seismic activity, right? You have earthquakes.
Right.
Then, like, just that fact really affects the solutioning and how you have to think about that construction. And then you can talk about many of these things that is like obvious things that differs, which is not about you and me being different, which is facts of the geography in itself, which makes it different. Or stuff such as labor cost, which we see has a huge effect on processes. So we see that processes are usually an effective labor cost, which also makes sense because if you can, if labor cost is low, then you can add more people and you can run maybe more people intensive processes. And that would make sense financially. While in other countries where, for example, square meters, as we say in Europe, and labor costs in many areas are very expensive. And then you have to think alternatively. You have to think high installations and you have to think less people in the mix. So I think it's really, and that affects processes and affects basically what you want to do there. So yeah, really being empathic about that different people are different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important to recognize. And I appreciate you talking about that and calling that out. And I appreciate all your insights and thoughts today here in our chat. And I really appreciate your time on the show as well. So I want to thank you very much for coming on and talking to us all about Element Logic and ASRS and AutoStore and all the things that you guys are up to. If people are interested in learning more about Element Logic, what's the best way to do that?
I think our website Google is a very good tool there. So you type in Element Logic, and I'm sure you'll get some contact information and more insight on what we do.
All right, great. And we'll find that website for you, and we'll put it at thenewarehouse.com as well, and in the show notes so people can easily find it. So Christian, thank you once again for joining me on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.